that's actually a much milder statement than what India came out with. They said they don't favor a BRICS currency at all. Modi was just in the U.S. Who knows if they, what pressure they put on him when they invited him into tea and cookies. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting that they sort of started changing their tune after that U.S. visit. The Chinese and the U.S. have been in fairly intense recent negotiations. We've had high-level visits over there. Who knows what they talked about. Clearly, the U.S. does not want to hear any of this de-dollarization stuff going.
Lobo Tiggre, the editor of the Independent Speculator, recently joined Kitco News for an explosive tell-all interview, during which he discusses his opinions about a gold-backed BRICS currency, the difficulty of achieving de-dollarization with the world so heavily reliant on the US dollar, and some of the things happening behind the scenes with the whole situation. According to Lobo, the idea of a gold-backed currency is a brilliant one, especially when the concerned parties like the BRICS nations have no similar cultural roots. A commodities-backed currency will provide a smooth running process that cannot be manipulated by any of the concerned parties instead of just creating a fiat currency backed by nothing. However, Lobo does not see this occurring anytime soon for a number of reasons. Firstly, speculator and analyst says it's going to be especially difficult to dethrone the US dollar, a venture he believes would eventually occur, if not with the BRICS, then with another bloc or group. But Lobo says it's going to be much more difficult than certain experts have predicted with the BRICS currency. Another clog in the wheel is the mixed messages we've had from the group. Previously, Russian and Brazilian government officials hinted that the bloc was already working on a common BRICS currency that would rival the greenback. However, last week, Anil Suklal, the South African diplomat in charge of BRICS relations, reported that the alliance will not be discussing the issue of a common BRICS currency during its August summit in South Africa. Instead, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, will be discussing national currencies as a means of reducing the reliance on the US dollar. According to Reuters, Suklal said, "There's never been talk of a BRICS currency. It's not on the agenda. What we have said and continue to deepen is trading in local currencies and settlement in local currencies." Leslie Mosdorp, the vice president and chief financial officer of the New Development Bank, also debunked reports of a soon-to-be-announced BRICS currency. According to Mosdorp, the economic bloc has no immediate plan to launch a currency to compete with the US dollar. He added that there is a distinction between de-dollarization efforts and the creation of a common BRICS currency. He added that the development of any alternative is a medium to long-term ambition. With the idea of a gold-backed currency now temporarily laid to rest, Lobo discusses some important reasons why he believes this is not happening soon. Please watch, share, and like this video as we bring you important clips from Lobo's fascinating interview with Kitco News. Also, ensure you drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
This idea makes sense, but here's where I'd push back against Brent and maybe give a little olive leaf to the gold bugs out there, my fellow gold bugs out there, in that part of the problem with the BRICS-backed currency is, if you're Russia, do you really trust the Chinese? You do business with them because you have to, or vice versa. Or, so these are friends of convenience, not of deep cultural connection or something like that. And sorry, real quick. And therefore, the gold is the answer. Like, how do you have a BRICS-based currency if the BRICS countries don't trust each other? Well, you don't have to trust each other and what you're doing with your money behind closed doors if it's in gold and if it's stored in multiple countries. And, you'll be checking on each other. Trust, but, trust but verify, the Russian saying. So it actually makes sense. I mean, big picture-wise, I actually would go out on a limb and say, I think this will happen, Michelle. I think if not a BRICS-based currency, then somebody else will do something like this to take the dollar on. And it makes sense for BRICS as the front-running challenger to do it. And for the reasons we've just been saying, I think it makes sense for them to back it with commodities, to back it with something real that they can check on each other so they don't have to trust each other. So I actually think this is great. This is a wonderful thing. But what you said in your intro is the key point. It doesn't tell me what I want to invest in today. It doesn't affect what happens today. Like, even if they did announce it in the August meeting, it would be years before anything actually happened. Like, how long have the central banks been talking about CBDCs?
So why do you think this is not happening and not even being discussed at the summit? Again, if we're taking the South African ambassador at his word.
That is a good question. And it would clearly be more in Russia's interest to hurry things. But maybe other people are not quite ready to go on. This is a negotiation. It's a bloc. Modi was just in the U.S. Who knows if they, what pressure they put on him when they invited him into tea and cookies. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting that they sort of started changing their tune after that U.S. visit. The Chinese and the U.S. have been in fairly intense recent negotiations. We've had high-level visits over there. Who knows what they talked about. Clearly, the U.S. does not want to hear any of this de-dollarization stuff going, and it may be that they offered some incentives for them to keep quiet. Another whole way of looking at it is they're not ready yet. Maybe they thought they would be ready sooner, and then their technocrats said, "Oh, whoa, wait a minute. We don't have the infrastructure for this. Let's slow down until we're ready to do something and have a more concrete announcement." There are a lot of ways to look at this. And perhaps, word of it got out before they really wanted to. And because it makes so much sense, and because, anybody who's either, antagonistic to the powers that be in the West and wants to believe in bad news for the West, or anybody who's very supportive of the West and is concerned about attacks or possible dangers to the West, either one of those groups could grab hold of this idea and make a much bigger thing out of it than it is. But actually, Michelle, let's take a step back. And, I remember hearing about this idea early on in my Casey days. I can't put a date on it. I can't tell you what year or day it was that I first heard about a BRICS gold-backed currency. But I know that Doug wrote about it and was thinking about it probably before I even came on board, which is almost 20 years ago. And I remember that this is something we talked about around the proverbial water cooler as a potential tailwind for gold all those years ago. And in my mind, so, the idea has been out there for a long time, is what I'm saying. What was different this time was that people got in their heads that this was really finally happening. And I think that's really, if anything, the key takeaway that people should remember, Michelle. If you think about it, remember before this, it was Basel III was the thing that was going to make gold go to the moon in a certain date. And it seems like every year or two, there's some big idea like this that everybody gets all excited about. Right. And even if it eventually turns out to be true, it seems like it never lives up to the hype. I mean, Basel III is actually here now, and gold is actually given tier 1 status, and it is done basically squat for the price of gold. So this is the number one rain on the parade, Lobo Tiggre message. I love gold. I love you, gold bugs. But, get a grip and don't let yourself get sold a bill of goods based on some exciting, big idea.
Despite the hype around the creation of a gold-backed currency and what it would mean for the precious metals price, the news that it's not happening soon, at least not during the summit in August, has not brought down gold prices. Lobo says this is another indication that there are bigger things at play here. He explains that the category of investors and traders that actually move gold prices do not care about the BRICS currency, but other important factors like the DXY index and Fed rate hikes. Here's Lobo's explanation of gold's price non-reaction to BRICS news and the long-term overall de-dollarization trend.
The people who set the price of gold that I even just said it wrong. The people whose futures trades on the COMEX or the LME are quoted as the price of gold. That's a mistake. That's not the price of gold. That's what some of these future traders are doing. And those people, very, very few of them, if any of them, I think the way you and I do, or our audience does. They are not gold bugs. They're professional, market participants, money traders, gold traders, and they're in there to make their little slice of margin on the trades. And they don't care whether the gold goes up or down. They have no ideological stake in the game at all. And so I don't think those guys or gals were all, excited that in August gold was going to go to the moon because of the BRICS announcement. I think those guys are looking at the DXY, they're looking at the Fed, they're looking at all the same variables that they always look at. And none of that's changed as you and I are speaking, or as this announcement from South Africa came out. None of those other variables that you do see having a high correlation with what I refer to as the gold dollar exchange ratio instead of the price of gold. It's not surprising to me that it didn't move when the kinds of things that those traders pay attention to didn't move. Now, last week it did, but that's not our topic of today. But I'm saying it fits. In this is another nail in the coffin of getting too excited about some big idea that makes sense to you, but has no actual connection to what is happening in the marketplace today. If the goal is to, be a gold cheerleader and try to save the world by getting everybody back on the gold standard, sure, knock yourself out with a story. But if the goal is to make money, you have to look at what is moving prices, what is moving exchange ratios in the real world right now. And I don't think that was ever this story.
If this gold or commodity-backed currency is not happening, what does this mean for that trend of central banks ramping up their gold purchases? I'm
going to agree and disagree. I agree that that's happening. And that's part of what I'm telling my friend Brent Johnson, that people in that camp say, well, the dollar is still 50 whatever percent. So it's still the global reserve currency. Yeah, but it was 60%. It was 70% before. So the trend is there. I mean, to my mind, it's very clear that de-dollarization, it's not just a theory. It's not just a big idea. It is a trend in motion right now. But that was happening, or that has been happening before this BRICS gold-backed currency idea came up. So my disagreement is I'm not sure that I see any real link right there right now for this. If you think about it, so we just said the gold-backed currency idea has been around for at least 15 years, maybe more. So, it didn't correlate with that. It's accelerated in the last couple of months because of Russia saying what it said and now, the other ones. So it didn't correlate with that either. I think it correlated with the war and with Russia getting kicked off the SWIFT system. And this isn't original to me. This isn't my great insight. I think a lot of people will agree with me on this, that, a lot of banks, central banks and governments around the world, they saw that and they're like, oh, wait a minute, even if we're friendly with the United States, we don't want them having the unilateral power to freeze our assets or seize them, or lock us out of the global trade system. So I do think that is connected. That is a real thing. What you've said is exactly true. But I think it started with the SWIFT action, and it's been accumulating since then. Now, here's a key takeaway, though, for our audience out there. I mean, think about this. I don't trust central banks as far as I could throw one. And I think 99.999% of our audience is in the same camp. We don't believe anything these central bankers say. So if I'm a gold bug and I'm going to be bullish on gold because of central bank buying, isn't that a bit of a contradiction? I'm waiting on the bad guys to save me.
According to Lobo, central banks will continue to accumulate more gold for at least a decade to come. This would, of course, contribute to the overall de-dollarization trend, but the speculator does not believe that would matter much for gold price in the short term. Please share your thoughts, comments, and observations in the comments section below. Do you think the United States is responsible for the recent backtracking by the BRICS on a gold-backed currency, or is this just a strategy to distract us all while they work on the development of a common currency that would rival the dollar? We would love to hear from you. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more. Thanks for watching.